I came across a clip where Jay-Z was talking about how he grew up in a Christian family and how when no one else in his family seemed to be questioning their faith, he was pushed to do so at a young age. And when it comes to why he started questioning Christianity, he said this.
Why, if everyone in your family is Christian, why aren't you Christian? It's just natural. Like, if you were Democrat, why?
Right.
Because everybody you grew up with is Democrat. You don't ask the question. You know what I'm saying? But because there was some trauma there, it led me to ask the question.
So he says that some trauma led him to start questioning Christianity. And as we'll hear, this started a chain reaction that led him to a couple of big issues that he still has with Christianity today. But I have my own thoughts about what he said and about his new beliefs. So let's just go ahead and go through the clip together and talk about it.
Well, therapy has increased my life just recently. It's like 4 years now. But I touch on legacy and what happened to me as far as like my grandfather, you know, and what he was doing with his daughter. And he was a pastor. And it's like, I got to forgive that as well. As hard as that is, it's like, man, like that's deep for me.
Okay, we can pause right there for a sec. So as we just heard, Jay's grandfather was a pastor who sexually abused Jay's aunt, and this was something that was really hard for him to forgive. Since he's been going to therapy, he now realizes that he has to forgive his grandfather for it, but it's been really hard for him to forgive because it hurt him so much. But as countless studies show, not forgiving others is incredibly taxing on our mental and our physical health, so that's probably why he learned in therapy that he has to forgive. Now, I can't even imagine how hard it would be to forgive someone for something like that. That would no doubt be something that would be incredibly hard to forgive. But I think what probably makes it even harder for Jay to forgive is when you consider the fact that he rejects Christianity because of the actions of the person who needs to be forgiven. The actions of Jay's grandfather being so instrumental in his rejection of Christianity, Jay's understandably less receptive to the resources Christianity has that helps us to forgive in times when we find it nearly impossible to do so. This might sound strange, but if you have a worldview that has Jesus at the dead center of it, then at the center of what you believe, you have someone who is wronged in far worse ways than any of us could imagine, and we see him literally praying for the forgiveness of his enemies as they were torturing him to death. Even in those cases like Jay's, where the perpetrators aren't doing it out of ignorance and they don't deserve our forgiveness, we can be reminded that at the heart of Christianity is the gospel message, which helps us to see just how much God has forgiven us for, even though we didn't deserve it. Because of this, we have enough forgiveness in our emotional bank account to be able to afford forgiving others who don't deserve it either. But I get it. Even with Christianity, it can be hard to forgive others, and I know that it's probably a lot harder to do so without Christianity in mind. But next, Jay talks about the conclusion that his grandfather's actions led him to conclude about religious people.
What happens is just called transgenerational trauma, right? Like what happens is it informs who I am today because something about him wasn't right. So I was like, man, people in religion are hypocrites.
Okay, so here he talks about how therapy helped him realize how the situation with his grandfather impacted who he is today. He eventually concluded that all religious people are hypocrites. But interestingly, this didn't stop him from exploring other religions. Here's how he describes what he chose to do after that realization.
So I sought out religion to say, okay, maybe I'm not a Christian. Let me see, maybe I'm, God body, right? Okay, maybe I'm a Buddhist, okay? Maybe I'm Muslim. So I got a bit of, and then realized, I'm just a spiritual person. Because if you walk into any one of these places, you walk into a mosque, a church, a thing, it's an altar. That's constant. There's God, there's an altar. That's what aligned for me in my spirit, in my soul, was I'm a spiritual person. I don't know everything that's out there, and I'm fine with that. You know what I'm saying? I know God exists. And I'm cool with that. But that I was informed by that because of what the actions that happened with my grandfather. And, so, and like going to therapy and like just allowed me to see that clearly and just really put things in place like, I know why this triggers me in this thing because this happened.
So he talks about how in therapy, he learned why he was triggered by Christianity, and he came to realize that it was because of his grandfather's actions. He also talks about how even though he started rejecting Christianity, he wasn't sure if he rejected all of the other religions yet. So he tried different religions, and he found that in those different religions, there was an altar. And by that, I think he just means that there's a place for people to surrender to something greater than themselves, and also that there's a God. Now, he isn't all the way right about that, but leaving that aside, it's interesting that he concluded that he still believes in God, even though he stopped believing in Christianity. But think about that for a second. He says that he still believes in God, But why does he still believe in God? This is where I think that it gets really interesting. Listen to this clip of him expanding on why he believes in God from a different interview.
I don't know how else to explain this sunset and how if I get a cut, a scab forms, and how my body is like this computer that reacts to movement, how my eyebrows is made to keep sweat from going in my eyes, and how everything works so perfectly. No one can tell me that two planets crashed and these things happen. It's very hard for me to believe that. I believe that everything that happens in life is there to build character, to be learned from, is some type of energy returning back to you. Everything that I've based my life upon, has worked out that way for the most part, but I don't know.
So he believes in a creator based on his experiences of his own body and the apparent design. And he also believes that God allows everything to happen as a way to make you better, for you to learn from, and so on. So in other words, he believes in a creator that allows things to happen for a greater good. But if he believes that the creator allows everything to happen for a greater good, then I don't understand why he would reject Christianity. Think about it. The core reason that he initially rejected Christianity was the fact that his grandfather did some really awful things, and I get that. But if he believes that God will allow bad things to happen for a good reason, then there would be no reason for him to reject Christianity in the first place, since there would be an explanation available for the bad things that happened to him and his family. In other words, if he rejected Christianity because of a horrible thing that happened, then as Jay said, he believes
everything that happens in life is there to build character, to be learned from.
So this should have taken away the initial reason that he had for rejecting Christianity in the first place. But leaving that aside, this greater good conception of God that Jay believes in, it makes sense on the Christian view. I just don't see how it makes any sense on his new view of God. The reason why is because although Jay believes in a creator of some sort based off of the apparent design that he sees in the world, it doesn't follow from that this creator works everything out for Jay's personal good. If Jay's right about the fact that this creator hasn't revealed himself in any religion, then there really isn't any good reason to think that this creator knows everything or even knows who Jay is in the first place. Nothing about this vague conception of a creator implies that this creator knows all of us on a personal level or works things out for our greater good. So since his view about the greater good doesn't follow from his current view of God, then why does he hold to this belief that doesn't seem to fit in with his current view of God? Well, according to Jay,
as far as religion, I take things that ring true to me.
And as we just heard, the things that ring true to Jay are the things that appeal to his personal experiences and intuitions. But if his intuitions are right about there being a creator that allows bad things happen for a greater good, then the more logical explanation for those instincts would be that this is God's way of telling Jay that he needs to embrace Christianity, since Christianity can make far more sense of Jay's intuitions and beliefs than his current view can. After all, the central message of Christianity is about how God allowed an incredibly horrible evil to happen, being Jesus' death and crucifixion, and how he used that evil to bring about the greatest possible good, being that his death would bring salvation as an undeserved gift to everyone who accepts God's offer of salvation. So in Christianity, there actually is a good reason to believe that God will allow bad things to happen for a greater good. God taking something evil and turning it around for good is something that we should expect in the Christian view of the world for this reason and for several other reasons. So Jay seems to realize how Christianity makes sense of the complexity of his body, but what he seems to be missing is how it also makes sense of all of the things that he's experienced, including the real and deep suffering that he sees in the world as well. But there's one more thing he said that's practically begging for a response, and that's the part where he said,
I think, the people that are reading the Quran and people that are reading the Bible are really reading about the same person.
And I was going to respond to that part, but then I thought, you know what? I know someone who can do a far better job at responding to that than I can. So I called up my boy David Wood from Acts 17 Apologetics, and I was like, yo, Wood, you think you can cover this one for me? And he was like,
what do you mean? Of course I can, stupid.
So click here to hear what he has to say, and I'll see you over there. But the next time you hear someone rejecting Christianity based off of the actions of the followers of Jesus rather than the actions of Jesus, what are you going to say?
What do you mean?